The war in Israel continues to rage as now in day 45 since the horrific attacks of 7 October continue to rage. The battles within the Gaza Strip are just merciless and continue to have extraordinary levels of destruction. Lots of people dying on both sides of the conflict. We now have news from CBS earlier today that there may be some breakthrough in getting more hostages released. We have this from CBS.
Sort of the big news now, it seems that we are closer than ever to sort of getting to the end of negotiations to at least have some of these hostages released. We know that the White House has been playing a key role, though perhaps not with immediate negotiations. But what can you tell us about, the White House role here, how the White House is feeling about how things are developing?
The U.S. and Qatar has played a critical role as they continue to try to help broker this deal, which, Anne-Marie, as you mentioned, appears to be getting closer. At least that is what the Deputy National Security Advisor, John Feiner, said yesterday on Face the Nation. He said that where there were areas of differences, those seem to be narrowing, but of course they are proceeding with caution. And the president himself spoke about this yesterday, saying that he doesn't want to talk about too many details until he is able to secure an agreement and bring those hostages home. So, Anne-Marie, so far what we know, according to our colleague, Margaret Brennan, is that there is no final agreement, but there is a written draft that is being passed around between parties as they try to, get to the final language that everybody can get on board with. And we're talking about the release of about 50 hostages in the first round that would require a ceasefire for several hours a day. And then there would be more hostages if that were to succeed.
Now, one of the reasons why we want to do a deep dive on this today is because there's a little bit of confusion around this about what it means. Some people are hearing some of the comments coming out of the Israeli Defense Forces, some of their senior leadership about that there's not going to be any ceasefire. They don't want any ceasefire, and that they claim that putting more pressure on the Hamas side actually increases the chance of getting hostages to release. So it's really unclear about what the truth is. So we wanted to provide a little bit more clarity on what has happened so far and what may come in the next few days or possibly even weeks. Now, we first of all have to understand that from the very beginning, the outset, that Hamas, part of their attack plans on 7 October were expressly to get hostages. So this was not a byproduct. This was one of their primary objectives, because many of the groups and the cells of fighters that broke through the gates, their primary objective was immediately to grab hostages and pull them back in, while others were still going out and doing their attack. So they intended to bring these hostages back all along. And we have to know that they had a very specific reason for that. They wanted to try and extract leverage against the Israelis. They want to try to get some of their hostages back, but it's also something to use to try to limit the Israeli counter strikes and what they're doing to us. So now then, some of that didn't work, because I think that they probably thought that having the hostages in undisclosed locations in Gaza would give the Israeli Defense Forces pause in going into the actual street fighting, and that has definitely not been the case. So I think they've been a little bit surprised by that. But so far, they haven't been willing to just kill the hostages because they still want to maintain that leverage. It's important to understand that the Hamas side has shown that they have absolutely no concern or worries about loss of life, whether their own, the Israelis, or the hostages. And if push comes to shove, there's no doubt that they would not hesitate to kill those hostages. And we need to keep that at the forefront of our thoughts here. Now, if you're one of the family members of any of these hostages, whether it's American, Israeli, or any of the dozens of other nationalities that are involved here, you want first and foremost to get those people back. I cannot even imagine the anguish that's going through the minds and hearts of every single family member of all of these hostages who are still in captivity, or whose outcome we don't even know. There was the two of the people that they thought were hostages. They actually found their bodies yesterday, and so that, of course, has ended the process for those people. And now then there's turning into grieving. But of course, it's just causing even more anxiety and anguish for the rest of the hostage families who wonder what their loved one is going through right now. It should be the priority of the Israeli government and of the American government to get those hostages back. Now, we have from these Qatari negotiators, who, by the way, are positioning themselves as sort of the independent negotiators, because they're hosting an American military bases. They also are allowing the Hamas leaders to stay there. So they're trying to take a neutral position in this. So they're acting as a negotiation that both sides can have some degree of confidence in. So that's actually the legitimate role of Qatar. The Qatari people have said that there was a bigger deal to get more hostages released that was knocked out because of the Israeli attack into the Al-Shifa hospital a few days ago. So instead of helping the situation, that attack into the hospital has complicated things. And now, instead of, there was at least 100 hostages that were initially being discussed. Now that number is cut in half. Now then they're hoping to get 50 within the next couple of days if they can get whatever these final negotiating tactics are settled. It should be the priority of these governments to do whatever it takes to get those hostages back. Now, you've had some on the Israeli side say, no, we don't want to do that. We want to put more pressure on Hamas to force them to give the hostages back. That's not going to work. It's kind of intuitive. You don't even have to be a hostage expert to know that if somebody's holding hostages and they're threatening to kill them if they don't get things done their way, ignoring them and killing as many of them as you can is not going to induce them to give them back. I can't think of any logic that would be in the Hamas side to make them think, well, all right, let's just give the hostages away, because then that loses your leverage. To the contrary, you're wanting to get something for that. And here's the thing. The claim that to have any of these negotiations with the Hamas people holding the hostages is going to somehow put the war at risk is complete nonsense. The balance of power between the Israeli Defense Forces and the Hamas fighters is as far as the sky is from the ground. It's not even close to being in comparison. The outcome of this war tactically is not in question. Given enough time, the Israeli Defense Forces will win, because the other side, they can't replace any losses. They don't have any health supplies, medical supplies, and they don't have any way to replenish their ammunition or their personnel. So just by sheer attrition, they're going to lose, whereas the Israeli side has access to everything that they would need. And they can go however long this takes, and they will eventually win. And of course, their primary objective is to keep this from expanding beyond there. Given that the outcome is not in doubt, then of course it should be the highest priority to get as many of those hostages out as possible. That means American, Israeli, and all these other people. Because if we don't do that, if we say, hey, we don't care about this and we want to somehow hurry up, then just think about how anguishing the people are going to be, the family members of those hostages. We owe it to them, because they've already gone through one massive trauma at all. Is it not okay? Should it not be fine to just say, even if this takes longer, we're going to get all those people back? Because who benefits from the IDF going faster and winning their war faster if it sacrifices the hostages in the process? Nobody benefits from that. Hamas doesn't benefit from it. The family members don't benefit from it. America doesn't benefit. Israel doesn't benefit from it. Whether, and we're just picking this number here, let's say that it will take 3 months to go as quickly as you can and get a victory, not worried about the hostages, or 4 months or 5 months even, if you go more methodical and slower and have more pauses before you go in there and you get the hostages back. That should be a non-question. It should be an obvious answer. Get the hostages back. You're going to win no matter what. And as long as you conduct your operations, intelligently and with good military tactics, you can keep your troop levels, your troop casualties, even at lower levels than they have, by taking fewer risks, knowing that time is on your side and it's not on Hamas's side. Given those factors, I think the president of the United States should put even more pressure on the Israeli government to do whatever it takes to get those hostages back. And once they do, now then your military task is made a lot simpler, because then you don't have to worry about that. But until that happens, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Israeli government and a lot of anxiety for those people. Let's get them taken care of. That's all we have for you today. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode of Deep Dive.